Welcome back to Confessions of a Recruiter with Blake and Declan. We are on a global mission to build the world's largest community of recruiters so we can all connect and succeed together.
That's right. If you want to check out more of Confessions of a Recruiter, jump onto confessions.tv, subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, access merch, and if you want to chat to us directly, join our Discord at XR House with the links below. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Recruiter. Mate, I'm really excited about this podcast. I get excited about every podcast, but this guest is just going to be spitting fire. Adrian Byra from Lead Group, Vidaura, Top. Mate, we got a big announcement on this podcast that we're going to share with you as well. So, mate, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making the trip up.
Yeah, no problem. It means you'll get a broad brush of a bunch of random facts rather than deep dive. Well, we'll see what happens, right? But yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
It's going to be a huge value add.
Now, I think this is going to be a special podcast because the way your brain works is very special. And if for some reason you explain things really clearly, but you also just think out loud really well.
Yeah, I do that. I don't know if it's well, but I do that.
No, you're doing it really, really well. So look, I'm really keen for this podcast and kind of diving deep into your experience in recruitment, what you're getting up to at the moment, and kind of some war stories about, what you guys do in Lead Group, Vidaura, Top, which I think this is probably a good segue to talk about our sponsor and our official sponsorship.
Straight away, get it out the door.
Let's just get it out the door.
It's public.
Hey.
Okay, so The Outsource People is a business that you run, and it specializes in virtual assistants specifically for recruiters.
That is correct.
Awesome.
It's, exactly what it is. You're right.
Perfect. Now, you're a sponsor of the podcast now. The Outsource People are officially sponsoring the Confessions of a Recruiter podcast. Now, the reason why we've thought this was a really well-aligned sponsorship, firstly because as business owners, it's very, very important to be able to leverage your time and outsource the lower level roles where you can focus on higher value activity. And there's a really big disconnect in recruitment where everyone talks about VAs and VAs this and they're so good and it's so hit and miss and it can be messy and it can be painful and sometimes it can be good. And what you guys have been able to do is really refine a niche on helping recruiters specifically with VAs rather than just a general VA company that try and sticky tape a solution together. And I think that's really special, and I think that's an extremely awesome value add where we're pretty pumped to be able to promote, because we talk to recruiters all the time that are like, how do I outsource the boring stuff? How do I leverage my time better? How do I bill more? How do I reduce the things that I don't enjoy doing? And Top has come up with a solution.
Yeah, I think it's funny, right? Like you say we're specialized. I'd like to think it was, strategic as far as what we were doing, but actually it's the only thing we really know, right? So it started with me helping a bunch of friends, because as us recruiters are, you sit in recruitment for 13 years, everybody is pretty much recruiters. And they just said, what you guys are doing in Lead Group is working so well, and everybody, you're doing a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1 ratio of having these processes built overseas. Can you help us do it? Because, they share their frustrations and stuff. So I helped a bunch of friends, and that became a thing. And then I kept helping them, and then all of a sudden we said, why aren't we leaning into this, right? And Top was born, I guess, in the Outsource People, and it's I think it's really, really fun, because when you're talking to you start to recognize that the problems with, I think a lot of people ran into it in when COVID times happened and everybody started working from home and having just autonomous workers in general. This is why outsourcing blew up, right? Globalization fast forwarded as soon as COVID happened, and everybody was forced to change their structures and forced to change their communication, deal with the fact they didn't know what their people were doing. and now it's an easier shift into outsourcing, right? And so it's funny now when you look at it and you work with people, you actually realize most of the problem isn't the outsourced worker. And I'd love to say that my competitors are all shit, right? Not. Employee is great, right? People are whatever environment you create for them. I think we've gotten very good at that, and our differentiation is because we know recruitment, we're able to not only give somebody who we train up and run through all the processes and set them up in all the different technology that recruiters use and get them used to everything before they start, but also we can help the client, and we can work with the client and talk to them about how do you actually build processes and how do you actually outsource, right? Because it is a skill. Management, particularly management of autonomous workers, is a massive skill.
Yeah, and that's the biggest failure that I've had in the past. I've hired VAs and not seen the value or forgotten about them, and they are people that can create a lot of value, but you don't actually know what's the best process to onboard them, how do you do it, how do you get the most out of them. A couple of our partners, H people, they do a fantastic job of it. They've done it really well, but I've never seen it mimicked like that. And then until we obviously met you, and we've onboarded Ryan with us this week, and mate, it's been professional, seamless. I'm pumped. Like it's really good. You're actually getting taught how to build a relationship and implement things with your VA to create value. Because otherwise you just get this VA and you set up on account and you're like, do your job. And you're like, well, what job am I doing? And then it fails.
I think what would be really important and what got me buying into this a lot is some context around how you run Lead Group and the structure and why it works so well. Because when you started explaining to me Lead Group, your recruiters, the average billers, how many VAs they've got, how it all kind of works, it really made a lot of sense, and you explained it really, really well. And it reignited my passion for VAs again, because I thought, holy shit, if he's doing this at scale, like clearly I've just been doing it wrong. So walk us through firstly, for people that are like, VAs, I want one, I fantasize with the idea about one, I want to be a better recruiter, I want to bill more, I want to reduce my workload. Walk us through how you implement VAs at Lead Group and the average billings of a recruiter, and just kind of like a general kind of brush on your recruiters.
That journey. It's funny, right? Like it's been a journey, and by all means, I don't want to take a lot of credit for it, because it was probably a lot of trial and error over the last 4 years, and a lot of recruiters doing incredible things and picking up things and then mimicking the great things that worked and trying to get rid of all the things that didn't. But look, Lead Group, I attribute the people within our business that are literally tirelessly trying to get better tomorrow than they are today. And that's just what everybody within the business is. And it's amazing. We talked last year, there was two quotes I said at the end of the year, or two things that I told everybody that I was particularly proud of. One, I was officially last year, my biggest year in recruitment was the worst billings in the company if I was still recruiting, which means everybody is a better recruiter than me, which is really, I had to deal with that emotionally, right? But that's awesome. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, when I billed my biggest year, I was I think it was the biggest biller in my company that year. And they're all smashing me, right? And that's really a really cool thing to get to be a part of and watch these people do these things. The second thing I said that was the most particular, thing I was proud of, I guess, of the company. Every single person in the company last year had their biggest year they'd ever had in their career. And some of them, before they had started with us, had been in recruitment for 15 years.
Wow.
And they all grew, right? And so certainly there's a lot of aspects that I would attribute that growth to within the company, and certainly the best people is a big part of that. But I think the resourcer model is a huge part of that, right? For a number of reasons. One, I think everybody's happier. Do you know why?
Shit's getting done
because, their shit is somebody else's gold, right?
Yeah.
Like they literally, and we start that every week. Our processes in the company are, what do you hate? this week, right? Let's start with that, right? Because we might as well shovel that shit, because someone else out there, if we recruit to get the right person that knows they're taking that job, they're going to be pumped about it because your shit is somebody else's gold, right? Like someone else is excited about it. Someone else is learning something new. Somebody else, maybe it's you writing ads and you've been doing it for 12 years and you hate it, right? Someone else, that's their first ad they're writing, and they're learning from a genius that's had 12 years experience, right? So I think that everybody's happier, right? And the theory, Harvard Business Review did a study, and it was like 68% of people, happy employees are 68% more productive, right? So literally, if you have a happy employee, way more productive. Also, a happy employee doesn't leave, right? And we all know that in recruitment, if you keep somebody, they're going to become productive. At one point, tenure is the biggest problem in the industry, right? So you're ticking both those boxes by just increasing their enjoyment in their job.
So what are those things? Like, let's talk about, you sit someone down and you go, what are the things you hate? What would be like the top 5 things that you find is the best delegation tasks that you've been able to get to your VAs?
I think that I think it's probably things that the easiest way to put it, because it is different for every person. So we've actually mapped, and it was since I last talked to you guys, and we talked about, okay, how do we scale it to your different teams, and kind of how I offer advice, how do we scale that? We do strength profiling in all of our resources over there, right? Which is a psychometric profiling. It takes the 32 competencies and ranks their top 8 and shows you, okay, what are their top 8 strengths? We've matched those 32 competencies now to 32 different roles that we can outsource. And I've built these lists, and then I've matched up what strength matches to what role profile, or what, task, I guess, right? And so...
How did you do that?
A lot of...
Like, is it a profile that you built yourself, or is it like a disc profile? And
No. So strength profiling is done. It's actually, I buy it off of Truku.
Okay.
It's agility testing. Can't remember. Anyway,
Agility, yep.
Sorry. Is there like a follow up to this podcast that I
yeah.
I don't have my notes
Chuck
on
in the
these.
show notes.
But in any case, it's 32 raw competencies that they work off of. And so I've matched those up to tasks, and then whatever the person wants, we can actually, like, we're building automation on the site that people can say, okay, I want these 10 things I want to outsource. It'll match the best person that we have available right then to do those tasks.
Okay, so for context, so you have a team of essentially trained recruiters in the Philippines, and you go through a screening process just as you would if you were growing a recruitment agency here in Australia. You find talented Filipinos, wherever they're from, that they're just based in the Philippines. Is there any other locations?
No, we have 3 branches in the Philippines now, but
Okay.
just in the Philippines.
Okay, so 3 branches in the Philippines. You interview them, you screen them, you train them on recruitment, you teach them basically how to be a recruiter. So it's no different to onboarding Declan at Lead Group. You would do a profile test and you go, okay, these are your top 10 strengths. If we've got a recruiter in Australia where these are the top 10 pain points that they're experiencing in their desk, we'll match those 2 people together.
Exactly. It's cool, eh?
Super cool.
Do you know what? You know how you made a comment right before this started that I think while I talk, right?
Yeah.
Thought about that when I was talking to you guys. And I was like, wow, that works. And now I've done it. A month and a half later, I've already built that.
You're welcome.
Oh, my God, eh? Do you have any idea how much you've impacted my life, and this company? Yeah, exactly. So, no, to tie back to your question, though, as far as what probably works the best, I think the easiest way is the things that recruiters know they should do but never find the time to do them, start there, right? I think a standardized process, anything that's boring. As soon as you get to, the golden handcuffs term, right? Like, by the time you get to $1 million biller, you probably start hating recruitment. That's the worst part, right? You're like, oh, I'm on this journey of being amazing. And then by the time you get amazing, you're like so over recruitment because you've done it for 10 years. Well, that's how you rejuvenate yourself, right? You're not over recruitment. There's parts of recruitment you love because they're the parts that you're still learning. But all the stuff that you're not learning, offload that, right? Offload every single Seek search and build a process by it, right? And pop that out. And I think there's a level of, I think there's a standardization of management in general, but really applicable to outsource or managing autonomous people, is you offloading tasks is the first level of management, and you're shit at being a manager, right? You know, and this, sadly, most recruiters who have tried outsourcing, or sometimes a lot of team leaders that hire juniors in recruitment, is, okay, go do this for an hour and then come back to me, right? Ugh. Right? And it's just always niggling on them, and it just seems like an annoyance that they're like, oh, I'm spending money and I don't know what they're doing and I need to find something else to do. And it's always just sit in the back. And I'm sure every one of us, including me, when I started managing, like, felt that, right? And did that and made that mistake and didn't know how to fix it. Second step is actually outsourcing processes, okay? So instead of saying, go do this for an hour, do this for an hour, and now do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 1 hour for the rest of your life. Yeah. Now, boom. This is the process. This is how you do it. Everything is perfect. Every week, I'm going to ask you, how'd you go on those 3 hours of your life, right? That is offloading process. And that's where they give back.
Anyone out there that is looking to get a VA to support them in their agency, all you need to do is reach out to Top, the Outsource people, inquire, mention that Confessions of a Recruiter or ex-recruiter has sent you, that you've heard about Top from our podcast, and you will get a 13% discount per month on an outsourced specialized recruiter to support you and your business to reduce your stress, bill more, to be a better recruiter. Okay, so you mentioned job ads.
Sure.
You mentioned in a previous conversation, like market mapping, like essentially sourcing candidates, whether it be a Boolean search on Seek, LinkedIn, whatever, in the database to go, hey, you've got a role in, I'm going to shortlist you the top 30 candidates that I find. So your recruiter can just focus on revenue generating activities, or the activities that provide the highest level of satisfaction for a recruiter, which is being on the phone, finding a great candidate, getting them engaged, sending them off to the client, managing the process.
Well, it's selling, right? I think the best part is that if you're offloading that stuff, you're getting rid of the stuff that arguably one day AI can take over anyway, right? So it future-proofs your career as well. And it gets you spending the time training on the shit that actually makes a difference, which is selling, right? And human interaction. So the moment our recruiters are not on the phone, they should be writing down, I'm not saying they do it every time, but they should be writing down, could I outsource this? Or could I get the development team in the Philippines to build automation for this, right? And so the same thing with our resourcers in the Philippines, at least in-house, we're saying, guys, if you're doing something, you're starting to get bored, it means let's automate it. And then we can get you doing more valuable things, right? It increases value. Like, value is a derivative of how much money can you make and how much time. And all of us are on that. That is growth, right? That is literally growth. So if you are a recruiter and you want to grow, and let's say you don't want to be a team leader or whatever the generic shit is, just your growth is based on giving yourself time back to spend it on better things. And hiring somebody and doing that and offloading processes. And I think the biggest or most important part about how do you offload is you offload worries. Because anyone, and you guys are probably starting to feel this, anybody who gets to a certain point in their life, it's actually not time that is your biggest constraint, it's decision making. We all have a certain amount of decisions we can make in a day, and then you get emotionally, you just get fatigued and you can't make the right decision anymore, right? So if you offload responsibilities, that's where the person is empowered, and that's where you truly can grow.
So at what point do you know when you need a VA?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, I've got friends or partners that they've hired a VA and they go, I don't think I really need one. So at what point do you think, like, is a rule of thumb, or should you go, hey, is it just purely on billings? Is it your time per week? Is it your
job
max in the market, job satisfaction?
Yeah, I think it's a commercial way up, right? Like when we invest in somebody in Lead Group, we go all in, right? And we're like, sweet, the first thing you do is I don't want to hire your resourcer for you because they're going to be your friend, right? That you talk every day to. They're your buddy. So first day one here, we have a talent acquisition in the Philippines, and she'll shortlist 4 people for you. You're watching videos and you're starting to interview your first week, right? To get that resourcer in. And then we start pulling it away. Like, I think the right time is, are you getting bored?
Yeah.
Because people can only deal with so much change. Change is a stressor, and you can only cope with so much stress. So it's like, as soon as you feel a little bit bored, drop somebody in and fuck shit up, right? That's growth, and that's where you can start really going to wherever you're trying to get to, right?
So, mate, how did this lead group come about? So, fucking tell us, because
your questions. So what? Well,
yeah.
What happened?
What happened? How did it begin? Because, mate, a lot's happened in 4.5 years.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think it's vision. So my business partner, I actually have two business partners. So myself,
we only know about one.
Myself and Lee Lachlan started the business, and then while we were going through the process of planning and whatnot, he had a full-time resourcer at the time, or they work in tandem, Ricardo Noguera, that we got on board before we started. So it was the 3 of us that essentially started the company, and got.
And one of
him
them's
involved.
a VA.
No.
Oh, they're all in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, resourcer. Yeah, no. So they were actually just working in tandem together. And arguably, if I think about that resourcer strategy, that could have come from the success that these two were delivering, right?
Yep.
When we were chatting, I left Randstad, where I was probably in that situation where any longer it would have been impossible to get back on a desk and start something from scratch, because I kind of was managing quite a big team and hadn't recruited for quite a while, and I was probably a little nervous about the whole thing, to be honest. Lee and Ricky took care of that, because I basically paired myself up with 2 people that were the pinnacle of excellence within the recruitment industry, and they still are today. Those guys just are machines, right? And I watch them. I always think of it as they're the pace setters of the company. They're the short-term thought of, like, this month we're going to beat last month kind of thing. And then I'm the one kind of steering the ship of figuring out, okay, but what about the month after that, so to speak? And so we started as the 3 of us, and with this dream of, if those guys can do this, and it was actually from a company that I used to work for. With them, I had overlap in a company called Oscorp, and I watched. I was mentioning I was one of the top billers, or less than, I guess, the top biller that year, and it was $430,000, right?
Oscorp.
Oscorp, yeah, and then
I thought they'd do better than that.
No, keep in mind this is 10 years ago too. It might have been different, right? I like to tell myself that it was different back then. It was harder, right?
Yeah. Pre-COVID, mate, it was a way different world in recruitment than post-COVID.
But, so your best year, you're only a little bit better than us.
Yeah, like honestly, man, like it's
Did you bill 400? I'm still at 220.
Oh,
yeah, it was 175 back in the day.
But man, like it's funny, right? Like, because I saw then, I was like, man, I'm the man, right? I'm actually embarrassed for myself when I think of myself back then, just peacocking around, thinking I'm good. And I remember Lee Lachlan, so my business partner now, started with the company, and we had overlap for about 6 months before I went to Randstad. I remember we flew down to Victoria together, Melbourne, to see some clients. And I just had this narrative with him, like, basically, I can't remember the chat, but I remember basically I said, one day you could be like me, kind of thing, right? And I know, like, I think about it all the time, because I know Lee would have been like, what, are you fucking kidding me? Like, right? And then I found out, so then I left and moved into a bigger management role with Randstad, and kind of went down that journey for myself. And then I found out the next year he broke $1 million. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, I just hate myself. Right. And I tell people that all the time in the company, like, what a dick. Right. And then the next year he did better than that. And the next year did better than that. Right. And then all of a sudden, pre-Lee Lachlan, 400 was like killing it. Right. And then you've got this company where so many people were breaking 600, 700, 800. all because of one person just showing them it's possible.
It's identity,
right?
yeah. Like the 4 minute mile effect going.
I almost brought that up. Yeah. Like exactly the same thought process. What you believe is possible, right? And so I think me and him got together actually it was just random. We went down to the tennis in Melbourne together, and then it was the typical 2 a.m. drunken night. Started chatting, and then found out he was keen on starting his own thing, and I was like, man, I kind of wanted to build something where I'm pushing people more, right? And I always had this thing in Randstad where I'm like, man, if you're not making comms, like, go be like a scuba dive instructor or something cool. Recruitment's not cool unless it's getting you somewhere, right? If it's not a journey, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just wasting your life. And so, we kind of connected over that, and then every week for a year, just talked about strategy. How do we build this company that was only elite, and you build this collection of people that push one another in a really supportive way, that you create greatness within, a confined space. And that's where a lot of the ideas were bred, right? And so that's why I have no idea why we ended up in these different things that we're going, but we're just, a bunch of people that are incredibly driven and incredibly skilled all together, pushing each other, and we're going cool places.
And Lee's proven it possible, and you're cheering everyone along the way.
I'm literally, like, I wish I was cooler than that, but I'm the cheering squad. that is literally me, like, oh, guys, this is amazing. You're all doing things I could never do. Yeah, no, it's literally, that is me.
So, mate, how did you find out, like, the ways to work? Like, big box agency, Randstad, Oscorp to some extent, like, it's typically, I don't know if are they talking about VAs? Are they talking about, like, innovation and changing shit, or is it like, hey, we're pretty stuck,
this is the model, stick to it, and this has always worked?
I think Randstad are a lot of the big box agencies, from what I know. I obviously know Randstad quite well. The other ones I don't know as well. I think they're talking about it a lot, right? I think Randstad, oh man, the year I left, Randstad invested in like 100 different startup companies that over the globe, and that's their tech and touch was their big push. So they talk about it a lot, and I think the execution when you're that big of a cog is very, very difficult. You hear that generalization of like, yeah, you're small and agile, right? That's your strength. We've leaned into that, and that's the journey, right? I think we're all a bit scared of, do we want to grow? Because right now that's our superpower.
So how many recruiters have you got at Lead Group?
17, 18, probably, like, full-time recruiters. But then, like I said, it's kind of a cog of 60 or something like that, just because.
Yeah, so you've got 17 recruiters, and how like, what I found really fascinating from our last discussion is how many VAs per recruiter that you have. So you say you've got 17 recruiters, but a cog of 60. Can you kind of dissect that for us and explain?
Yeah, it's like I said, the growth of each recruiter. Like, I think I mentioned before, like, tenure is our worst enemy, right? Any recruitment company that wants to grow, you keep your people. If you don't keep your people, you ain't growing. They're not getting productive. They're not winning, right? And so how do you keep somebody? Sure, you're nice and you're honest, and you tell them the truth, and you are a cheering squad for them, and all of that fun stuff, right? And you pay them more, and you give them more comms, and give them more benefits, and all those, wishy-washy, flexible work-life balance, stuff.
All the good stuff.
All the stuff everybody, like, jumps on.
Birthdays off?
About, oh, yeah. Definitely want to add that to the list, right? You do all that stuff. Sure, you've got it, right? You've got to be at the 60th, 70th percentile of the market. But I think if they are growing with you, why would they leave? Because the risk of leaving is so great when you're on a journey, right? And you are literally growing every single day. And so a lot of the people that have started with us have a 1-to-1 ratio. So they've been 8 months in, and they're learning how to deal with one resourcer, right? Yep. And that's the stage they're at. And guess what? As soon as they start getting bored, there's the trigger. And I'm like, man, let's add another.
What do they say to you when they're getting bored? Do they literally say, "Hey, I'm getting bored"?
I mean, hey, I'm a cheering squad, right? I listen
Because
and I
like,
ask, right?
because like it's not very often that, honestly, most bosses are in tune with their employees' thoughts, feelings, emotions. Unless you're asking directly. Like sometimes I'm a victim of it. Like I'll be sitting there and I'll be talking to one of my guys and I'll be like, "Oh, hang on a second. Do you think I'm giving you contradicting advice?" Like, yeah. I'm like, "Oh shit. Sorry, mate. Yeah. How am I contradicting my advice?" I'm like, "Oh, you said this one day and then the next day you said this." I'm like, "Oh, fuck, my bad, dude. You should have told me you think I'm fucking contradicting myself." Shit like that, you know?
No, it's true. Like I think there is probably an underemphasis in the industry, probably every industry. I just only know recruitment space, but of not valuing that individual's journey, right? Like we and any team leads that we have in the company, if I'm not doing a one-to-one meeting every week with that individual, every 2 weeks, I'm doing a chat with them. That is a 30-minute chat, and it is all about where they're headed, where they want in this company. Do they want to stay in this company? Do they want to be a scuba dive instructor? Do they want to own an ice cream stand? What the fuck do you want, right? I don't care. I think that's a derivative of safety, right? Like the global CEO of IBM, and I cannot remember his name. I hate that this is a podcast. You're super. Hey, I remember his quote, right?
What's his quote?
He's clearly a guy. Said so if you look at the average tenure of a professional in Australia is 2.7 years.
Yeah.
Now, right. So people will start in an interview process, and us as recruiters are empowered with this stuff. We're great interviewers. Is you say, okay, when you come in this company in 3 years, like, what do you want to do? Fucking hell, they don't want to be there. Right? Like, they do not want to be with you in 3 years, probably, right? So how you ask that question, and it starts on that journey, is like, all right, you're not going to be here in 3 years, but where are you going to be? And then every single person that has come in our company, I don't care what they do. I don't care how much they bill. I don't ask. And by the way, hey, this is a tip. Good recruiters, big billers, if you go an hour in a first interview and never ask them how much they bill, big recruiters cannot not tell you. They're like, I did 600 last year. I'm like, yeah, man, I know. I can tell by your strategies. Like, it's all right, man. Like, it's amazing. Like, if they have not said it, because it kills them that's not your first question.
Interesting.
It is such a hack. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't talk about that shit, it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's setting you up for a short-term win. But if you talk about in 3 years, what do you want? Because this business, I'm going to tell you all about this business. This business wants this, and this is what we care about, and this is what we are. Let's find alignment there. And in 3 years, if we're both aligned, where when we both get off this ship or this train or whatever you want to call it, we both won from this journey, let's start talking about now. But until we decide in 3 years, do we both win from this connection, what's the point? Right? And that, if you interview like that, then the company is what you say, and as long as it is, then nobody leaves because they're on their own journey. Right?
Yeah, so you've got 17 recruiters. How long has Lead Group been around?
For 4.5 years. We started.
That's awesome
9
growth.
months before COVID.
Yeah. That is awesome growth. And what's the average? You mentioned before that you're really looking for people that bill over 600. Is that kind of what is the typical Lead Group recruiter billing per year?
Last year the GP to FTE, so like the average biller was 880,000. So if half of us did $1 million plus. I say us like I'm one of the million.
I had my biggest month
half
of
of us
467.
guys. I'm not going to tell you if I was in the million or not, right?
So the average recruiter is billing, let's just call it 900K. Let's just round up from 880 to 900. That's fucking pretty wild across 17 people. What do you put that down to? Is there some sort of magic in the office? Do you think it's purely because you've got VAs supporting every recruiter where you're able to get consistently more billings out of each person? Like,
And
why? How have you done that?
And another thing, like, how do you manage the potential ego of that as well? Like, how do you keep them all humble,
that's
smart?
right? Like, I think,
Do they all think they're just big dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fuck.
They
They're
are.
all better than me. Right?
They're barking from the roofs.
Yeah.
No, I think you guys asked a couple of different questions there.
Yeah,
so
sorry,
I
man.
don't
We
know
just-
which one to attack.
We hit you with a flurry of questions there. So,
But what about
let's
this
start-
point? No, I'm just joking.
Let me go, mate. Okay, so why and how have you got an average biller in your office at 900K?
All right. Well, starts with getting people that are already pretty fucking good, right? Like our average experience has got to be 8 years, right? They're all 3 to 15 years or 4 to 15 years, I think, right? So, and we don't compromise that because I think we've set up we're a value prop. So I assess when I run our budget. And I don't know, maybe everybody else does this, but the biggest thing that I look at is, all right, here's our operational costs. Last year, 72% of our operational costs went directly to our people, right? So this year, I build the budget off 74, right? And I don't chop things that go to the people. I chop everything else, right? It's either it goes directly into their pockets or it goes to something that's going to help them make more money that goes right into their pocket, right? So I think that's key one is build your value prop. If we say we want, $1 million billers, then we know we don't interview anybody that's doing under 400 and we don't believe they have the know-how or the skill set or the probably more the ambition to grow. We wouldn't hire them, right? And we can't compromise that. That's like a really important thing, and I bring it up right away. Like that's probably the hardest part. Like when we were saying the interview process, to say, look, there's really cool shit here, really really cool stuff, but you will be self-selected so fucking quick if you don't care here because everybody here cares like so much, right? I think the greatest thing that happened was when COVID made this weird like work from the office or work from home, right? We have like a work where you want, when you want. Everybody has unlimited leave and you work wherever you want. That is such a beautiful pulse check of your culture, right? Because guess what? We have 90% of the teams in the office all the time. Why? Right? Because they like being there. And they're learning from there and they're engaged in being there. They don't have to be there. It doesn't matter. So I think that is beautiful. Like I think that's such a great real-time point of deciding, do we have a great culture or do we not have a great culture? But I think, sorry, I'm getting off track from your great questions. So I think starting and building a value proposition to that person, knowing who we cater to, knowing that we only cater to somebody great, we do not cater, and our value prop is built around people who want to achieve. Right?
How do you get recruiters that are guns though? Because that's fucking hard, mate. Like you can't just pick a recruiter billing 600K and be like, yeah, come over here, mate. It's all good.
Yeah, true.
How
Most of them,
that's tough. Are you headhunting these people? Are they applying for job ads? Surely they're not applying for a recruitment consultant job ad.
Have you found a rec to rec that can actually give you a recruiter?
Yeah, you got a rec to rec?
Yeah. Hey.
This all started with Lee Jones,
Lee
mate.
Jones, right?
Lee Jones,
the boy.
Yeah, here he
Mr.
is.
Deacon's,
Yeah, the big
hey?
fella. Yeah,
They're
okay.
my we
Yeah, your
had overlap
homeboys
in
from Randstad.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, Lee's placed one. Yeah, certainly I brief direct directs on what we look for and what is worth their time and what's not, right? And I actually spent a lot of time with rec directs to say this is the full picture because I think we're not pushing marketing yet, and I said we don't necessarily. We want to grow, but we want to grow the revenue of our people rather than grow a business. Like, what's the point in growing headcounts? It's just some superficial number.
Yeah, you learn
society
that pretty
talks
quick
about.
when you lose money on some people and you go, what the fuck was the point of that? But everyone thought I was rich because I had X amount of employees. Yeah.
And people, it's first question they say, oh, you got a company. How many people you have? It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a weird, and that drives these behaviors of, like, people being ambitious about people growth, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if your people aren't growing. So I'd much rather just sit on my people, and we've said it last week. I'm like, okay, we hired 5 new people in May. And like, until you guys are 600 plus, right? And you're all kicking it here and you're flying. We're not hiring anybody, right? We're just going to dump all our time into you guys, right? So I think that's the key is it's the same as a salesperson. What's a great salesperson, right? A salesperson is quantifying who's right for their sell and who's not right away. And then the person that is right, sell hard to them and then deliver on what you say you're going to sell, right? Well, that's an interview, right? You tell them exactly what you are, decide, and the right people. Don't waste your time. If they run away, that's cool. If they come back, spend your time on making sure it's right, and then deliver on every single thing that you said, and you got a great company.
So do you pay big salaries?
No, we pay whatever they're on.
Okay, you just match the
yeah. And I say I don't really care what it is. That's like such a shitty little number. Again, I talk a lot more about the long-term stuff. So I'm like, yeah, the money stuff we'll figure out, right? That's the start of the journey. That's nothing to do with, the trade-off that we're going here, right? So I think yeah, you offer money, you get the wrong person.
Hey, just wanted to jump in here. We got a confessions hotline, so give us a call, send us a text if you want to share any juicy stories or even just ask a question that's been on your mind, because we'd love to hear from you. The phone number is 0485 865 483. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So you attribute an average billings in the office of $900K to getting good people to start with and kind of fishing out, are they long-term thinkers? Are they going to be passionate? Are they going to be ambitious? A lot of intangibles.
Yeah. I think it's the want on that journey. Again, it's not, there's if anybody listens to this in the office, very different people in the office, like very, very different people, right? The one collective is everybody's on this really cool journey and everybody's like there to do something amazing tomorrow.
Is everyone the same in the office? Like,
no,
are they all
so different? Like, that's the thing. Everybody's so different, and it's like funny how different everybody is. And it's like,
explain the extremes.
What's the situation? Like, tell us the most different person on 1 degree to one person, and then the other degree. Who is polar opposites of each other?
Yeah, I mean, you got one guy that literally will just chat circles all day and do nothing and then literally blank for like 2 months. And his journey is like, how do you like chuck up 150 grand in 3 weeks? How do you make that 13 weeks? Right? Like, that's your journey, man. Like, 'cause wow. Right. And then you got somebody else that literally like can't hear anything in the office because their focus is so dramatic that they just sit there and analyze every single thing that's happening in every moment. And you think a good recruiter is like a good salesman. They're the opposite. I think what they're great about is they're so not likable that people are gonna know who I'm talking about in the office, but so not likable that like they have no wastage, because clients and candidates that don't like them, so they never waste their time. They just hang up the phone unless they're really driven to get that job, right?
Yeah, okay.
And so they literally, that's their niche. So I think it's not that. It's like figuring out that person, figuring out their strengths and lean the fuck into those, right? And that's the same as our company. Like, when we build our strategy, and this should be applied to any business, like quantify what you're great at, especially in a fragmented industry like recruitment, where, man, it's the world's going to get more and more fragmented. Things like X-Recruiter is coming out, right? The barriers to entry are less and less and less, and there's easier ways to start your own thing. And so market share, who cares, right? Who cares? Everybody's your competitors. And you literally, man, Randstad was the biggest recruitment company in the world, and we had 2% market share. Who cares, right? Like, it literally does not matter on that side of things. So I think figuring out who they are, what they're good at, what they're really shit at, and outsourcing that,
Yep.
right? And then getting them to spend all the time on whatever it is they're great at. And that's the beauty of the outsourcing when we go in this like growth continuation, is like, yeah, people love what they're good at generally, right? That always coincides with one another. That's why all this big speakers are, whatever, all the famous people that talk about like careers and stuff are like, choose what you love, right?
Yeah,
that's why, right? You like what you're good at, you hate what you're bad at. And so if they can just offload what they're bad at and spend more time on what they're good at, whatever that is, it's incredible.
How much do you think the average billings in the office would be without the VAs?
A lot worse. A lot. Like, got to be 40% less,
Whoa.
I would say.
That's a big puppy number.
But you think about it, it's not even, there's some intangibles that aren't there's indirect benefit from that happening, right? Like would that growth happen without them, where we have the conversation of growth and where we have the conversation of you haven't built a process here, right? Like that's the beauty of this autonomous employment or outsourcing scenario, is like, if you can't communicate somebody, you are forced to build a process. And there's so many great recruiters who just scrap around on all day. And I was the same, right? Like I was in the pump manufacturing recruitment space in Australia for like my whole career that I recruited. I literally went into lead group thinking, oh, like, guys, there's only about 60 companies, right? Until I spent 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks that we started this company, where Lee Lockin said, you really find out how big it is, right? And all I did was map and realized there were hundreds of these companies that I didn't even know existed, and I had recruited it for 10 years, right?
Can you explain how deep you go with market mapping? Because I think this is one of the biggest frustrations that recruiters have. They just don't know. People talk about how to map your market. I've searched YouTube and there's not one video that actually explains it the way you do. So can you just like explain the extent in which you've worked this shit out?
Oh, like, I mean, if you look, you should talk.
Should we go get the whiteboard?
Yeah, I like a diagram, a couple No, I mean, if you like, I should have Lee and Ricky sitting here telling you guys about this, because
we'll do that when we come to Sydney.
Like, literally, they've been 10 years same market, and we're talking every one-man band in all of New South Wales is mapped by these guys, right? Because it's like they'll send out an email, something will bounce back. They'll add this person every day. We're talking years of process of every single CV they look at. They find a name they don't know, they add it to the list, right? All the time. And they find double ups. At the end of the week, they weed out the double ups and keep going, right? Like little add-ons for weeks and years. And their journey, they've got, thousands and thousands. And if you think about that accessibility for them, I mean, there's no recruiter in New South Wales in their space that would have access to that amount of people. And that's the value, right? Like, if you think when a candidate calls you, what do they want? They want your network. And if you can access everyone, like literally everyone, then, I mean, what else do they need?
So how do you get started on that? What do you do?
You start with one.
You go to top and you go, hey, I want you to map the market.
Well, you call us, yeah, and then we will say, no, but I mean, there's so many different companies that you can go into. Like Email Hunter, I think, was the old school one that we started with, and then we shifted to Lusha a bunch, and then you guys, we talked about Zoom Info before, right? So Zoom Info is a great one. There's just countless companies that you can cross-reference, but then you cross-reference, like a lot of people don't think of Seek Database. Recruiters use Seek Database, but why aren't you cross-referencing every manager that you want to flow to in Seek Database and checking there, right? Then checking LinkedIn and seeing all of these things. Like Jordan, actually, so our first hire, it was me, Ricky, Lee, in this tiny little box that we started. Now, it was a beautiful box with a beautiful view, but it was very small. And our first hire, Jordan, who's still with us now, so he's our longest employee. He started, I think, 3 months in or something. He played on my soccer team at Sydney University, and he was becoming a doctor. And he was like first year as a doctor and needed flexible work hours. I was like, they're like, why him, Adrian? I was like, well, we can give him flexibility, and he's got like 6 years of education left. So like, he's not going to leave us, right? And sure enough, it's like 5 years, and Jordan's still wailing away, right? But he was just full-time mapper. That's all he did, right? Just all day. And so like he would be amazing if he didn't sweat so much when he public spoke. He'd be incredible information for you guys on how to properly map. But now Jordan is like upskilled our entire team in the Philippines. And so, because we know he's graduating next year, so we know we have a year left of Jordan. He said he's going to do 4 hours still. I think it's going to be Friday afternoon or something. but then
We
he's
need
good.
it.
We got to get him on.
We got to get
even
Jordan
if it's a
on.
voice only.
Oh, he's glorious. But yeah, he is a whiz at dissecting the entire market and figuring
Any
out how to
market?
get any market. You can just give them like, man. So like before somebody starts with us, we don't care about like non-competes and stuff like that, because before the person starts, no matter what they've done, we say, okay, this is the market you want to do. This is what you want to be in. Sweet. For a month before that person starts, Jordan's mapping all day, right? Like just all day, and he just keeps going until he gets to, and he's like, how many you want, Adrian? I'm like, I don't know, 2,000. I just throw out a number. He's like, oh, there's 2,000? Okay. And somehow he hits 2,000. I'm like, oh my God, could I have said 3? Right? Like, and he'll just keep going, right? And then when that person starts with us, speed to productivity, which is another big one,
Same
especially
with us.
with turnover in the beginning, right? They start and they have access to flow. They can send out an intro of themselves to 2,000 people within their market. So it literally gives them the box for them to play in. And certainly we have no non-compete stuff because it's our data. We've floated out before they started. We've hit them on social media before they've started. Like all these great things happen. It's awesome. Like that is incredible. And I'd say Lee and Ricky are the masters at that. And it's just like taking them and how do you pull
Repeat
that
that.
out and repaint that and then push that out. So that's a big part of a lot of the Philippines team would work with us on.
I love the sound of that, because so much of recruitment is trying to figure out how to do something for the first time, or get someone's details for the first time, or think about who to reach out to. And if you've got this like really well defined perfect list of 1,000 companies that is perfectly orientated to their product line, the hiring managers, the contact details, what they're like all of that already mapped out, mate, you'd only need to speak to one candidate and you just know you're pumping them out to the right people, and you can remove 80% of the shit part of recruitment, which is like, all right, I got this candidate's details, I'm going to do a write-up. All right, now I've got to fucking Google a couple of companies that are local to them.
Yeah,
What
no
companies?
one does it, right?
Oh,
like that's
it's
the worst.
the worst.
Nobody does it. Like, oh, I gotta go find them, right?
Yeah.
Well, we found somebody. You know how I was saying earlier in this is like, your shit, somebody else's gold, right? That shit is Jordy's gold. Like Jordan loves that stuff all day. Just like I remember one time I was at a link up with somebody and we were talking about something monotonous that would be terrible, and I was just like, yeah, well, I mean, fucking who likes that, right? And then I look over at Jordan, and he's just sitting there, just wailing away, and he does 8 hours of just wailing away, finding new data, right?
What
like
personality?
He's a data miner.
What personality style is this guy? Like, how do you find this person?
Well, he's becoming a doctor, so I don't know. If that tells
High
you
attention to
much.
detail, introvert.
Super high attention. Yeah, he's
Have you
introverted.
personality profiled him?
Yeah, he did his strength profiling. So yeah, again, like man.
So we need to find a Geordie, do we?
Super detailed, super analytical. Like just loves dissecting things. Like gets excited about like if you were like Geordie wasn't finding something, like I bet you can't find it. He's like, but I can, and then just like would go hard, right? Like yeah, like it's pretty neat.
And what's the tier? So he'd map out the companies, and then does he map the candidates as well?
Yeah, you can do both, right? You can do either side. Like if you think about it, how many placements? Let's take hypothetically a perm desk. How many placements do you need to do to make $1 million? Let's say the average deal is 10 grand because it makes it easier, right? You got to do 100 deals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100 deals. So if you have access to every client that would be right for that candidate, how many candidates do you really need if they're going to be exclusive to you, right? What, 200, 300 candidates total in that one network? It's literally all you need, right? Well, but that's like I think that's you
And
look at the
everyone
numbers.
talks about these databases of like 1 million, 2 million.
Yeah, who gives a shit?
Who cares?
Right?
Yeah.
No, it's about quantifying like perfect people. You know, and contractors are probably a better example of this. Like, why do you need a big database? Why don't you just, if you can do 40 contractors at one time, why don't you just be the person that contractor who clearly must love the flexible lifestyle, every time they work through you, right? And if you have access to every client and you've already mapped that and gone on that journey as well, why wouldn't they just use you? So Like we push like authenticity is one of our 4 values within the company. And I talk about it again, tying it to recruitment so fragmented, and like we could be quadruple the size and we're still not 1% of the industry, right? I'm like, who cares if you don't like that client or you don't like that candidate, and fuck them off, right? Because like they probably don't like you either. And let's just build a tiny little 0.1% network on both sides that we love talking to, because they probably love talking to us, and we then get to be ourselves all day, right? And then we're done. We have 100 contractors that live and die for us, and we live and die for them. We have 10 clients that need us for those contractors, and they know we deliver on that side. We are done. There is no more journey, right? Like then your next journey is going from $1 million to 1.5, and so on. So if you start thinking about it that way, now your comment earlier would be like, yeah, you got a weird brain that thinks weird. And now I'm just like thinking about my brain. But like if you look at that as a diagram, like that strategy, and that's all you have to do as a recruiter is, so that mountain, I always say, when people hate cold calls or getting rejected or whatever, I'm like, man, you got to make more enemies than friends anyway. Who cares, right? Whether it's a no or a yes, you're still on the same journey, because you want those no's so that you can say no to them. Yeah, fuck you too, right? I'm moving on to the best people that I like and they like me, and you're just finding both sides, and then that thing just takes care of itself. And then you look at your growth sector, because that becomes boring. You still have to attribute to it, but guess what? That's growth. That's how you can you get that circle going, and they trust you and they know you're going to be there for them. Then you offload that to a resourcer. That resourcer gets upskilled to start managing that whole little cycle while you're doing bigger and better things and working on new things. And yeah, the client or the candidate still knows they can call you if something happens, right? Then you're good.
Okay, so let me break this down in the simplest way to put this forward.
But I thought you said I give so much clarity.
You do, mate. You do, mate. But I want to summarize that what you've just said in one go. Right?
All right, go. Yeah.
If we had a magic wand, the ideal scenario for a brand new recruiter building, you might want to get this as an extra shot there, mate, because this is about to be a big gold nugget. Okay, so if you're a brand new recruiter building a desk in a brand new industry that you have no idea about, but you had a magic wand and you could get any outcome you needed to set you up to start recruiting your desk, that would be get yourself a market mapper. Market map, let's call it 1,000 decision makers, hiring managers in a particular industry. Let's call it the pumps industry.
Sure. Fuck, we're gonna have all these recruiters going into my core space now, eh? It's not as cool as it sounds, everybody. Yeah.
The pumps industry, so 1,000 hiring managers in pumps, whether it's directors, HR managers, GMs, whatever. Sure. Market map the best possible 300 pumps candidates. And then you've got a really refined database of 1,000 contacts, 300 candidates, and you just work the fuck out of the candidates, become their best friend, find out about their interests, their preferences, what they're interested in, how they're going, and the moment they're ready to find a new role, you just reverse market them to 1,000 pumps clients, and 10 of them might reply. You get them 5 interviews, you do a deal.
And yeah, exactly, and vice versa, right? The client calls a job, you got 300 people you're already chatting to. Like all my people for years, like I wish that I was better at the CRM system. I was not, right? Like, because I wasn't good at process, hence why I was the worst biller in my company last year. All my candidates are in my phone, right? And you get a call, and I'm like, yeah, sweet, I'll talk to Brian and Ted, and he'd probably like that. And then I just chat away with my friends, so I loved my job. And then they'd send me to somebody new that I hadn't talked to, but they were buddies of this guy and this guy, and then it was done, right? Like that's your job, really. And if you build continuation with all these people in true relationships, like business strategy in every capacity is you build the quality of your network and then keep it tight enough that you can give the same level of quality that these quality people expect, right? So that's why these really big, billionaires out there have 50 people that they talk to, because those 50 people that are so high caliber expect a shitload in their network, right? And they give, take all day, right? And then as you start out, you got more, but that's the journey, right? You go through. So I think you start, day one you say, here's 1,000, here's 300, call them all, and then say no to 700 of them. And then you're left with 300 and 100. And then you compute, okay, does that equate to the amount of money that I want to make? All right, better build another 1,000, right? And then just go, and that's the journey. So your journey actually is climb a mountain, chop it, climb the next mountain, then chop who you don't like, and then just keep doing that, right? So arguably the market map on both sides should be, 3 different 6-month plans. And the
interesting. Okay, so let's say you want to bill $1 million and you work out your average fee. Let's call it, for the sake of easy maths, let's call it 10 grand.
Sure.
So if you want to place 100 candidates and you work with, I think 50% working exclusive with you is probably pretty good numbers. I'd say let's call it 1/3 would work exclusively with you. So let's call it 300 candidates ultimately is what you need to keep in your close network.
Yep.
Contact them every couple of months. Hey, how you doing? How's the dog? How's the kids? Happy birthday, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then when they're ready, you can float them out to this massive list of clients, but still go through that list of clients and go, you're a dick, you're good, you're a dick, you're good. Chop it, and then you're down to, let's say, half that.
Yeah.
You try and build that list back up again with 500 new contacts, clients, and then you go through that, chop it again, and you just keep building, chopping, and you just keep reverse marketing.
Yeah, 100% on both sides, right?
On both
just
sides.
Work both sides. I mean, they always say it depends on the market, right? Like candidate short market, you focus on the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you'll reverse market in a hot candidate market like we've had the last couple of years. Now things have softened a bit, so that shift is probably going to take place, right? But as long as you're agile to focus on the problem all the time, that's exactly what you do. Plus, it's empowering because you're like, I do a lot of sales training, so I do a 1-hour training every week in this company for the last 4 years or something. It's kind of recruitment, but it's a lot of business competencies that we go through. But I love the dynamics of sales because sales applies to everything, right? And if you get on the phone and you don't have a destination, you can execute every single phone call. Like every phone call can be a win. Even that win is like, fuck that guy, right? But like if you don't ask pointed-end questions, like I go into the call and be like, I want to fill this job, but rather I want to give value to this person, whatever that person needs, and then get off, you've just created continuation in your relationship journey, right? So like my call would be like, yeah, man, look, I don't know, right? I do have a job, so I'm trying to double touch here and I'm working on a job, but I don't really care. Like either way, I just want to get to know you, figure out what you need in me, and like, hey, if things work with us, then when you do need a job, we're good, right? And build that, and then whatever they actually need, you can dissect that, and then you're always going to get a win.
That's interesting. Not having a destination, because you know what I think probably. Hopefully I don't always talk about my consultants and throw them under the bus all the time, but I think probably one of the struggles that I have in my office at the moment is they're so narrow, tunnel visioned on getting the specific outcome from the call that they're making, that they're not thinking broad enough and picking up any potential opportunity that might be present left or right of the tunnel vision. So, for example, they get on the phone to a great pumps candidate. They're recruiting a pumps position, and the candidate goes, "Nah, that's not. I'm not interested in that. My salary is 10 grand more." Rather than going, "Oh, okay, interesting. So, what are you interested in? Blah blah blah. Let's get you out. Let's pump you out to a few extra pumps clients." They're going, "Okay, yep, no worries. Well, you're not right. Boom." And then they're not diving deeper into, okay, well, what are you after? What are you know. What's important to you, blah, 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 and then still at least getting something out of that conversation. So essentially what you're saying is if you're not so tunnel visioned and tunnel focused on this direct outcome that you're trying to achieve, you'll be able to pick up on other things that you could leverage off in the future and continue that relationship.
Yeah, totally. And even if you don't know how to do that effectively, you can always buy yourself time by just getting information from getting that person to talk, right? Like, if you guys ever listened or read any books on Daniel Pink, who's he does a great masterclass. If you guys have ever been we subscribe to masterclass in Lead Group, so everybody's listened to a lot. We talk about a lot of that weird stuff, but he talks about, like, if you never ask a yes or no question, nobody can say no, right? That's pretty standardized stuff. But if you go in, so, okay, as an example, you guys now have, Declan has an outsource through me, so Ryan, right? And I was helping Ryan on his sales pitch, right? And he said, okay, so I'm going to ask them, like, have you ever thought about, starting your own company? Or would you be interested in starting your own company, I think he said. And I was like, why don't you just change that to, like, would you be interested at one point in starting your own company? Because now it gets them actually thinking about, maybe one day I would, and then they start thinking about glasses half full, rather than identifying, no, I'm not in a position, I have a visa, so I'm just going to tell this guy no and get off the phone, right? It's asking a question that actually starts interacting and talks about possibilities rather than the right now. Yeah, and so I think that's the sales technique with it's same with headhunt calls. Like, I used to do a lot of, like, the company would tell me, hey, we want this guy. So there's nowhere to hide. I was like, shit, I have one phone call and I got to land this guy for that company. So it was navigating, like, you don't go in and say, like, hey, do you want to switch jobs, right? But rather just open up the conversation. It's like, yeah, like, man, so what's good about your job right now? Fuck, that sounds great. I bet there's some shit things, right? And then they start talking about the shit things. You're like, ooh, let's dive into that a bit. Yeah, and then we start this conversation, and then you start matching up your job to be like, ooh, good, he hates that, and I have that, right? And you start matching these different levers to pull down the line. You don't want to talk until you listen for an hour, right, of this, if you're like, literally, I have one person to land. But that's exactly how you do it, right? It's probably the most fun thing to do in recruitment if anybody hasn't done that, where you get one name, challenge yourself, ask your client, hey, can you give me one name? It's pretty fun. Anyway.
Well, I was going to say, I reckon that's happening because they may not have a specific niche. Like, if you're talking to 300 candidates, you want to make sure you're getting close with them, you get an option. When you're a generalist, you're like, oh, fuck, there's like millions of candidates. I'll just call the next one.
Yeah.
If you're forced to a patch, imagine if you're a territory manager in a specific geographical location, you got to make sure you've only got that set of people to sell to work with. If you know you can just go anywhere and do whatever, then you can just get a small of everything.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right there. It almost feels like, oh, there's always another, and they don't cherish the now and the who you're speaking to. Maybe I think that's probably a pretty good guess on that. Because it's kind of the same thing with leads, where I used to give my guys access to, like, basically a hit list of advertised roles on Seek or LinkedIn or whatever. Like, a VA would create a list of advertised roles, who the hiring manager is, so they can just, like, call them or whatever. Yeah. And because this list was getting updated 50, 60 contacts a day, it was almost like they'd just go in, they'd go, I feel like messaging that guy. And then all of a sudden you'd have, like, over 1,000 leads. You'd have, maybe they'd contact 20% of them because they just didn't feel like the other ones were good enough. And they didn't follow up either because there's going to be new leads on there tomorrow. And it's almost like if they've got an abundance of something, they don't take advantage of it.
Yep.
I saw this.
I agree.
They've always got food. They're never hungry.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you manage that? Because I used to do the same thing with automation and outreach, and I'd go, you don't have to cold call it blended. Like, we'll just fill them up with leads. And then I'm going through, like, I had to get rid of one guy, and then going through his emails. I'm like, mate, there's so many emails that are unreplied. Like gold mines. Like,
like, hey, I'm looking for people. Have you got anyone? And it's like, oh, yeah.
Send me a CV. Busy. Oh, it's too hard to reply back. They asked me to send them a CV.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you not let that happen?
Yeah.
Laziness, because they get everything given to them.
Well, yeah, but I think, and I think you're right, because you think about that too with VAs, if you guys call that, right? Like, okay, well, how do, maybe I'll just give them a VA and then they just do less, right? And I think that's culture driven, right?
Yeah, it has to be. Hey?
Like, yeah, it does. But when you're every week, you're talking about growth, and every week I'm saying there's $1 million here in everybody's desk every single week, and every week they're watching people do way more than them. They just start going along for the ride, right? Like we just associate it to I do a lot of metaphors, right? But like, the train's going, right? And we're all going up this fucking cool mountain together, and some of you are not going to keep up, but also we can't let you drag us behind, because the moment you do that, you lose your high achievers, right? And I think it's an empowering way of putting, like, step up.
How many hours are your guys doing a week, like a day, a week?
It depends on the person, right? Like,
are they ever just like getting in at 8:31 and then leaving at 5:01?
Yeah, some. I think it depends, right? Like, I think as a leader, you can only push somebody to what they want, right? It's never about what I want. I tell them the company needs them to hit a certain level to be there because we're high performance. But man, if they're $1 over that, do I care, right? Like, it's not my job anymore, right? They've done it, their give and take, and they don't want anything more. So
true. I guess I'm more referring to, like,
right?
Yeah, I guess, sorry to cut you off. I guess I'm more referring to if someone's not achieving what they should be and they're not putting in maybe extra time to achieve that, is that a performance management thing where you're like, mate, you're not hitting your budget, but you're leaving at 5:01? Like, why aren't you?
Yeah, I think we've got, because I said we've got flexible. You work where you want when you want, right? We have a clause in our contract that is, if you don't maintain a certain level, we have to tighten up the parameters. I call it a nice wishy-washy, like it's a support parameters, right? One of those is you got to start being in the office more so we can support you more and get you back up to speed. And when that happens, you just have an honest convo and, like, firstly, do you want to get there? But I think it's down to a safe chat where I have an agreement with everybody that I'm like, look, what I care about is if you come in our company and when you leave our company, you're in a better spot than when you come in, right? And I've held myself accountable no matter what. If we've had to get rid of somebody, if it hasn't worked out, whatever has happened, I help them get a job with our competitor. I float them. I talk to my friends. I figure out what they want. I get them into a better situation on their journey. And it's probably the thing that I care about most, and it's probably the only time I recruit anymore is when I'm helping my people with things. But I think that gives this safe playing ground to be like, look, man, it's not, I don't care, right? If you don't want to get there in the next 3 months, put up your hand, and I'll spend 3 months helping you get another job, right? If you do, then let's tighten this shit up, because you're not putting in the effort, and you're not doing what you need to, and you're not doing all of this stuff. I can tell you what you do need to, or what I believe you need to do. I might be right, I might be wrong. But you choose, because it's going to be a hard journey, right? One of the biggest things that you can, that for you to do is change your pace, right? Without changing your environment. So if you let somebody, and I used to do this all the time as a manager, just be let's make them, first get good at their job, then we'll speed them up. Nah.
Mate, tell this thing that you do.
Yeah, like in the first 3 weeks, I'm like, man, just run as fast as you can, make as many mistakes. That's why we want a resourcer in there, pumping leads into them, pumping every candidate into them, right? Just run. Your only job, I don't care. You just let it burn, right? But just run as fast as you can for 3 weeks, because that is defining your pace. And then after those 3 weeks in that organization, if you drop from that, you feel that stress, like that's your natural inclined pace in that environment. Which is incredible, right? And so I think it's a really easy way for managers to help steer their teams, but also for people, if you're making a shift now in your recruitment career, go in and just run.
So let's just make sure that we know what that means. So when you say go in and run as fast as you can, what are you actually referring to?
Intensity.
Yeah, I mean, go in and make as many calls as you can, as quickly as you can, do as much as you can. Don't actually, so Forget all the shit I was talking about earlier when I was saying strategy and being perfect, right? Nah, first 3 weeks, just go.
Okay, so
Like,
pump as many phone calls as possible,
Yep.
talk to as many clients, as many candidates, and just be on the phones as long as possible.
Yeah. Like when I was saying that your journey is that mountain where you got to burn bridges and make friends, the faster you do that, the faster you get to that mountain, and then you get to start a new mountain, right? Like it's so people, and I've really learned this interviewing so many recruiters, but like when recruiters are like, oh, I have 3 years experience, like how come one recruiter will have 3 years experience, one will have 1 year, but the 1 year somehow knows way more than the 3 years? Because your experience isn't based on time. It's the amount of calls you've made and the amount of problems you've had and the amount of things burn in your career that has happened, so the lessons you've learned, right? So your experience isn't based on time. And so many people talk about that, right? And so if you move faster, and we push this in the Philippines, like all day long, right? Man, like it's safety is the biggest derivative for productivity, right? So if you can create this super safe environment where that person knows they could literally lose $100,000 for the company and no one cares, right? If they have that, they will run because they don't care about tripping and falling. And so if you start that narrative with them and be like, man, just run as fast as you can, make as many mistakes, learn as much as you can. We'll talk about it once a week, right? And they have a little section in their link ups to be like, okay, what was the big screw ups? And most of the time we'll just talk about those. Well, what did you get from that one, right? And it's amazing the growth that happens when all you do is glorify the mistakes and say, fuck, this is going to be a good one, right? Let's get the opinion of other $1 million billers in here. Hey, what would they have done there? Ooh, man, you could have done everything but what you did, right? And that is a beautiful thing. And that's how people grow fast. And that's how you build. If you guys have watched The Momentum Generation, it's a movie on Netflix, and it's about, I'm going to get this wrong. I've watched it a couple of times. But it's about the 10 greatest surfers. So it's Kelly Slater and all his boys.
I've seen that.
Have you? Yeah. And at the one point of these 10 guys that surf together, at the one point there was like 8 of them were in the top 10 best surfers in the world, right? And they talked about the dynamics. I think about that a lot when I attribute to our team, is like, how did they make this, like, they pushed each other but in a positive way, where they like went out there and almost killed themselves every day.
Oh, yeah,
but all came back and laughed about it at the end, right? That environment they created was flawless. And you can compare that to a lot of different elite teams in any sport. You apply that to recruitment, it's the same thing.
That's awesome. How would you, if someone is at a low pace and you need him to pick up the pace and kind of rebirth them, I guess, into that mentality of run as fast as you can for 3 weeks, and that's your pace moving forward, and don't drop below that. How would you kind of reinvigorate a recruiter into that mentality?
Yeah, that's tough, right? That's so, like, essentially that's like a performance management type scenario, right? Everybody's a little bit different, but I don't know if it's right or not, but I start saying, firstly, the journey you're about to go on is generally the hardest one, and it would be easier to start somewhere else than change your pace in this company. I want to support you on that, but I only care if you do. So put up your hand and say you're in. If you're in, then I'm in more than you, right? And I'll get you there. That's step one, because step one is honesty of like, are we both in this or not? Because I'm not spending time on you if you're not, right? And that's key, right? You only create a high performance environment if you spend your time on the high performers getting better, instead of just saying, oh, they're doing great, so I'll spend my time on the people not productive. Nah, fuck that, right? You spend time on the people that deserve it because they spend time on themselves. So I think that's number one. And then number two is give them the long-term destination. So in 3 months, okay, let's say today you're getting one interview a week, right? In 3 months, you're going to get to 5. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. But one day you're going to get to 5. Okay, that's the destination. Now let's work backwards from that. For the next 13 weeks, we're making little tiny changes every day, and then you'll get there. Yeah, and that's all. And it's just making the steps. Because when somebody, like, man, I'm sure most people have probably listened to this, because most people who listen to this are probably recruiters, have had that moment where we're like 6 weeks, we haven't made a deal, we're stressing out, we're second guessing everything about, like, am I just shit? Was it a fluke for the last couple of years? Like, what the fuck is happening, right? Don't underestimate that emotional trauma that's going on with that individual, right? And so that little step to you of like maybe one extra call every day that should equate to that over 13 weeks, that's a big step for them at that moment. So I think it's making that first step so small and regimented, and building the plan of every day what little step is better so that it looks attainable to them. Big things happen in time, right? If you're patient. I think that's the best, from my experience, that's the best way to attack it, and it's the most consistent way.
Love that. No, that's awesome. Hey, you've got some knowledge bombs. I reckon we could keep going for probably another hour if we tried.
I didn't even know.
It's been an hour and 20 minutes.
I had no idea.
Yeah, time flies when you have fun, hey?
Yeah. Oh, guys, it's great. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Anything else that you want to ask?
Mate, I'm blown away. I reckon, I totally agree. I reckon this sponsorship is definitely becoming a partnership. And, mate, really appreciate your time and coming on.
Hey, no, I really, really appreciate it, guys, because I love what you guys are doing with this. I think it's right. I think the brand is great, hence why I backed it with Outsource people. I think it gives the right value to the industry and builds the industry as a real collective. And that's what it's about, right? To keep raising the bar. So, thanks so much for your time, guys.
Awesome, mate.
No
Thanks for
worries.
joining us.
Easy done.
Thanks,
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions, or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.